Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Yasmin Khan, and I'm here with Wosny Lambre, but you all know Woz. Woz, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be on with you guys.
Thank you very much. We have a packed show for you guys tonight. Jenk and Anna are both out, so that's why you have me and Woz tonight, but I promise it'll be a good time. Maybe. I mean, the stories are a little crazy, but with that, without further ado, since we have so many stories to get to, let's roll the tape on this first one.
He is not coming back to our country. President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story. If he wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. There was no situation ever where he was going to stay in this country. None. He would have come back, had one extra step of paperwork, and gone back again. But he's from El Salvador, he's in El Salvador, and that's where the president plans on keeping him.
So this morning, Attorney General Pam Bondi doubled down on Donald Trump's insistence that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man mistakenly deported to El Salvador in violation of a judge's order, will remain in a mass prison there, despite having never committed a crime or been convicted of a crime. But Bondi and the Trump administration are facing a fight because the federal judge in charge of Abrego Garcia's deportation case is not backing down. Yesterday, Judge Paula Zinnes scolded the administration for dragging its feet in complying with a Supreme Court order that directed the White House to, quote unquote, facilitate Garcia's return, telling a lawyer for the Justice Department. So here's what the judge actually said. She said, to date, what the record shows is that nothing has been done, nothing. Now she's ordered an intense 2-week inquiry into the Trump administration's refusal to seek his return. So this is from the New York Times, noting that every passing day was another that Abrego Garcia, a 29-year-old father of 3, suffered harm in Salvadoran custody. The judge set up a fast schedule for officials to provide documents and sit for depositions. We're going to move, she said. There will be no tolerance for gamesmanship or grandstanding. There are no business hours while we do this. Cancel vacations, cancel other appointments. I'm usually pretty good about things like that in my court, but not this time. So I expect all hands on deck. So she's not suffering any fools anymore. Her ruling means that senior Trump administration officials will be forced to testify about their failure to take action. And it's really not so much a failure as it is just a refusal to take that action. It's willful and obstinate subordination. But in a written order granting expedited discovery, Zinnes said 4 senior officials from the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State will have to sit for depositions by April 23rd, essentially out-of-court interviews in which the officials will have to answer questions under oath from Abrego Garcia's lawyers. Abrego Garcia's lawyers will also be allowed to ask the government for relevant documents about the case. At this point, 3 courts, including the Supreme Court, have ruled, the Supreme Court, by the way, was unanimous, that the White House is required to take at least some steps toward freeing Abrego Garcia. But despite initially actually admitting that he had been deported by mistake, the Trump administration is still falsely insisting that he is an MS-13 gang member that should have been sent back to El Salvador. And we talked about this on yesterday's show. Those claims are incredibly misleading, and the judge recently argued that the evidence against him was completely vague and unreliable. This morning, when Pam Bondi was pressed to release whatever evidence they allegedly had, she would not share any details. Take a look.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia in Maryland. He's in a prison now in El Salvador. He was sent there. You insist, the president, everybody in the administration insists that he is MS-13. It appears that there's not going to be any sort of trial. He's not going to come back. DHS said he would be arrested and redeported if he comes back. Why not show the American people the evidence that he's MS-13 so they can make an informed decision? And why not show the public the evidence?
Well, he is an illegal alien who has been living illegally in our country from El Salvador. ICE testified, an immigration judge ruled he was a member of MS-13, an appellate judge ruled he was a member of MS-13. Hard stop, he should not be in our country.
Again, that is not entirely accurate. But if you want to see all the receipts, we got you. And I encourage you to go back and watch our segment from yesterday, which is linked in the description box down below. Waz, we're going to get into the vice president's response to all of this in a little bit. And it is truly, I think, unwell is the word I'm going to go with there. But what's so baffling about this story to me is the fact that at first they sort of acknowledged their mistake, but then they were like, you know what, we just have to double down on everything because I don't know what mistakes are weakness, or if they admit to have made a mistake, then it's like, obviously, this is a poorly thought out and poorly executed plan that we now have to cop to. What do you think?
Well, they fired the guy who came out and said we made a mistake by deporting this person. I think the only look, I don't know anybody in the Trump administration. I just go off of what's actually out there in the public record. And it feels like what they're doing is an attempt to have the most muscular, sort of outwardly powerful response to what I would say is literally the only mandate that the Trump administration has is that mass deportation, or getting rid of a lot of the people that came to the country under the Biden administration, is broadly popular. There's like a 55 to 60% approval for it. It's literally the only thing, the only leg they have to stand on. And they think, because of that, they need to show, basically a show of force that we will recklessly throw you in a freaking gulag in South America. The problem that they have is that they have no credibility here. One, we know that net deportations are flat, meaning Joe Biden was deporting the same amount of people as the Trump administration at similar rates. And two, they don't have the goods. All of these gang members, all of these violent criminals, all of these illegal aliens who are, poisoning America's streets and making our children unsafe and, threatening to kill our babies in their cribs. They don't have a shred of evidence. The one guy they said was an MS-13 ringleader in Virginia. They said, oh, he was like a kingpin and coordinated this. All they got him on was a gun charge. They got the governor of Virginia to show up to this guy's trial. Basically, he was a show pony. Like, look, we got a ringleader. Nothing. They don't have a wiretap. They don't have pictures. They don't have snitches. Fellow MS-13 guys that are like, no, this was my boss. They have nothing. And so all they can fall back on is this double down because they've been caught with their pants down. There's just no substance here. And the crazy thing for them is that the one thing that is broadly popular about their entire harebrained agenda, they are losing credibility on it by the day. They're sending barbers, they're sending makeup artists, instead of like, all right, go to the jails where these guys are in county lockup, or these guys are on Rikers Island or something like that, and they're awaiting trial and it's for violent crimes. All right, scoop those guys up. I bet you the country would be broadly behind even this crazy non-due process thing. But they're not, they literally can't come up with these people.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny also, and I mentioned this on yesterday's show, but they did have one instance recently of terrorism that was actually reported as being terrorism in the news, but that was that MAGA guy who set Governor Shapiro's house on fire in Pennsylvania. He was charged with terrorism. So, I mean, they really just have to build this whole narrative around terrorism and gang violence because they know that if people are afraid enough, then they will support things, and they will, including things like the suspension of due process. But actually, speaking of due process, while some in the administration are now just like, some people, including the vice president, they're just pretending that due process just really isn't that important, or it isn't anything that needs to happen in illegal immigration cases specifically. Of course, the issue there is that you don't know if people are illegal or criminals without that due process. But in a long diatribe on X, Vice President JD Vance wrote this. He says, to say the administration must observe due process is to beg the question, what process is due is a function of our resources, the public interest, the status of the accused, the proposed punishment, and so many other factors. To put it in concrete terms, Opposing the death penalty on an American citizen requires more legal process than deporting an illegal alien to their country of origin. Here's a useful test. Ask the people weeping over the lack of due process what precisely they propose for dealing with Biden's millions and millions of illegals. And with reasonable resource and administrative judge constraints, does their solution allow us to deport at least a few million people per year? If the answer is no, they've given away their game. They're giving their game away. They don't want border security. They don't want us to deport the people who have come into our country illegally. They want to accomplish through fake legal process what they failed to accomplish politically, the ratification of Biden's illegal migrant invasion. President Trump and I will not stand for it. That is interesting. That entire tweet, like it was very strange. But to Waz's earlier point, it does feel like this is something that the Trump administration can really get behind and support in a way that they can't with some of their other policies right now. Right now, I know we're going to get to this later on in the show, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but some of his other policies, specifically his tariff policy, he is seeing he's plunging in the ratings right now. His approval rating is diminishing because of that. And because right now, things like the economy, it's harder and harder for the Trump administration to blame that on the Biden administration because everyone can see what Trump is doing to affect it directly. In this case, they still can just blame everything on the Biden administration and everybody's happy. So anyway, the Trump administration's refusal to return Abrego Garcia to the states is now landing other Republican lawmakers in very hot water. Yesterday at a town hall, attendees grilled Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley about Trump defying the Supreme Court, and it's crazy. Look at this.
You gonna bring that guy back from El Salvador?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, because that's not a power of Congress.
Supreme Court said to bring him back.
Judges are.
Yeah.
And the president has that upholding the Constitution. He's defined the Constitution. You're on the Judiciary Committee.
Trump don't care.
If I get an order to pay a check for $1,200 and I just say no, does that stand up? Because he's got an order from the Supreme Court and he's just said no.
Yeah. He just said, screw it.
I'll be able to answer your question.
You ignored my letter.
The president of that country is not subject to our U.S. Supreme Court.
I'm pissed.
In case you missed it, what he said was that the president of this country is not subject to the Supreme Court, which is literally not how our government works. It's not how our government was designed to work, nothing. So today, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen made it to El Salvador, where he was denied a meeting and a phone call with Abrego Garcia. Van Hollen and Salvadoran Vice President Felix Ulloa told him the government had no information connecting Abrego Garcia to MS-13, but could not accommodate a visit to the notorious CCOT prison. And here is some from Van Hollen at a press conference that he held today in El Salvador.
Well, I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime and the US courts have found that he was illegally taken for the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CCOT? And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT.
All right, so in addition to that, this is reporting from The Hill. It says Van Hollen said embassy staff members informed him that they have received no directive from the Trump administration to make outreach on Abrego Garcia's behalf, despite a Supreme Court order to facilitate his return. So that was a crazy response that we heard, not just from the vice president, but also from Senator Chuck Grassley. Also, I think this is also coming up later on in the show, but Jesse Waters on Fox News said that, this guy was obviously MS-13 because he was obviously wearing a Chicago Bulls hat or jersey, whichever one it was, as if like all of us weren't walking around wearing Chicago Bulls merch back in the 90s, right? So ultimately, this is making Republicans look really bad. We're seeing that backlash at these Republican town halls. That was a Chuck Grassley town hall. So you know that that's a very, very red district. So do you think Republicans at large are going to face any kind of backlash from their base over the Trump administration's decision not to abide by court orders? Because it really seems like it's bothering a lot of their constituents.
I think the minute that people realize that the immigration stuff is business as usual, there's going to be a backlash. I don't think it's particularly gonna be because some guys got deported that shouldn't have. I don't know that the Republican base really cares all of that much about due process for people they deem to be quote unquote illegal aliens. But I think when they do get around to noticing that there are no immigrants actually leaving the country, and I think JD kind of gives the game away, like he, in his parlance, in his statement, when he says, oh, we don't have the resources, and oh, we can't. Bro, you guys have majorities in the Senate and the freaking Congress, okay? Why don't you pass a bill appropriating more monies, more resources to ICE so that you guys can do your mass deportation? Put more money behind it. These guys are allocating, $1 trillion budget for the Pentagon and the military industrial complex. They're slashing benefits like Medicare. They're doing all kinds of stuff financially. Up the ICE budget while you're at it, okay? And if this is supposed to be about these allegedly horrible illegal aliens, why are we sending 6 ICE agents at a time to get Columbia students to deport them? Why are we doing this to student protesters of a foreign country's horrific government's actions? Why are we dedicating resources, these precious resources, to activists against the Israeli government and their regime in the Gaza Strip? Like these people have no leg to stand on. And the truth of the matter is, I promise you, if these guys rounded these folks up and just sent them back to El Salvador, Venezuela, people would be like, well, that's what we voted for. It's not what instead, they're doing this fake show of force. They're trying to look like tough guys. So they're sending them to these freaking prisons where people are dying all the time, being beaten to death. Sometimes they go starving. They're sending these people to concentration camps, essentially. Instead of just doing the thing they were elected to do, which is like, look, people do want to see deportations, but they're not doing that. So again, they have to do the show pony stuff in order to seem tough when realistically, again, go look at the deportation numbers. They're flat. Biden deported as much people as Trump did, which is insane when you really sit and think about this.
I mean, so much of this is insane. Like, there's so many different aspects of this story that it feels like you're being gaslit and just like spoken to like you're an idiot this whole time. And that's what our government's doing. This is coming from our elected leaders, which is, yeah, it's just like mind blowing the longer you sit in this space. And like, I know for us, we like live in this space. I know a lot of our audience members also live in that space. It's crazy. There's so much going on right now to consider. And yeah, you're absolutely right. This feels like a very fake show of force, right? They cannot look weak. They can't back down from anything, right? To the point where they can't, instead of just admitting that one person that they deported should not have been deported, which is honestly, it happens, right? Like sometimes things happen, things slip through the cracks. Even if you have such a tight operation running, one mistake, that's understandable, right? But as long as once you find out that you made that mistake, you have to rectify what you've done. But instead, they just have to double down to the point now that they're calling things like due process into question. And they're saying, you know what, look at how great these Salvadoran prisons are that we're sending all these people to. Trump said in an interview that they're great, they're a lot of fun. It's a really nice place to be. People want to be in these prisons. These prisons have been flagged by international human rights organizations for human rights violations for years. This is nothing new. So that's where we're sending our people, whether they're supposed to be there or not. Like, no one's supposed to be in a prison camp. But anyway, we're gonna get to our first break, and we have a lot more on the other side. Be right back. right, welcome to the social break. I'm here to read some of your comments. Let's see what you guys have for us here. All right, Michael from Oklahoma. Hi, Michael from Oklahoma. I'm from Texas. We're neighbors. Michael says, Bondi puts the fault in facilitate. That's fun. Virginia in South Carolina. I love these like geotag names, by the way. Virginia in South Carolina says, we are a nation of immigrants. What happened to we only want legal immigrants? No, they just don't want brown people to come here. And yeah, that was always the argument. It's like, no, I don't have a problem with immigrants, only the illegal ones. And then you ask these same people if they have any kind of understanding about what the legal process is to obtain citizenship or even to come to this country legally. And they have no concept of it. It is incredibly difficult for the people who are trying to come here legally. So maybe that's a whole nother topic of conversation. Maybe we should revisit that process, but we know that with this administration in power, that's never going to happen. Lobbyist for Big Poor says, I love this transparency in quotes of the White House. I don't think the world has ever seen this kind of transparency. Yeah, they say a lot of things, but it's not always the things that they should be saying. DOGE says this is going to be the standard Trump legal tactic, delay until the news cycle moves on. Yeah, that's kind of how it's been going for a long time. I would say maybe for 10 years. There's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of delays, there's a lot of just, keeping people's minds occupied elsewhere while they do whatever they want to do. Pee-wee's Dr. Mondo says, so according to our own VP, they can say F the laws and our constitution since they were voted in through our political process. Yale law man knows better, total gaslighting and anti-American. It is. It's like, that that the things that they're saying are not real, that this is all fake, that it's crazy. And then they keep insisting, no, you're the one who's crazy. You're the one who doesn't know what's going on. And it's just not true. So Shumbathe Marxist says, I've never been prouder to be from Iowa in my life. Thanks, TYT. You're welcome. I'm glad that, I live in Texas and I do have a lot of Texas pride, but also it's like embarrassing. Like, I don't know. So I feel like I get it. Let's see, Uriah Heap said, I would say that North Korea has the worst concentration prison camps, but El Salvador ain't that far behind. Yeah, I mean, these prison camps in El Salvador have been very controversial for a very long time, as has Bukele. He's very popular in El Salvador because, he says that he's cleaned up a lot of the crime there, but his means of doing so have been more than questionable. So we'll be right back with more show. Welcome back to the show. You have Yaz and Waz here tonight in for Jenk and Anna, but we have a lot more show to get to. So let's get right into this next story. The Pentagon's Defense Digital Service, or DDS, has shut itself down effective at the end of this month. The DDS has been referred to as the Pentagon's very own SWAT team of nerds, which is fun. Before we get into why the DDS has decided to call it quits, here's some quick background information on what exactly they do, or what they did, really. The Defense Digital Service was created in 2015 to help the Pentagon adopt fast tech fixes during national security crises and push Silicon Valley-style innovation inside the Pentagon. It built rapid response tools for the military during the Afghanistan withdrawal, databases to transfer Ukrainian military and humanitarian aid, drone detection technologies, and more. Without the program, some key efforts to streamline the DoD's tech talent pipeline and counter adversarial drones will be sunset, one soon-to-be former employee said. So it sounds, these people, they sound exactly like the kind of people that someone like Elon Musk would want to actually keep around. In fact, the only reason why this hasn't happened sooner is because the members assumed that they would eventually be called upon to aid Musk in his efforts to streamline government operations, integrate AI into government systems, and overall just help the government to run more efficiently. Jennifer Hay, the DDS director, said simply, the reason we stuck it out so long as we have, is that we thought we were going to be called in. However, they soon realized that DOGE was really just trying to cut them off and shut them down. And so, seeing the writing on the wall, all 14 DDS members, including the director, have chosen to resign, with 11 employees opting to take Trump's deferred resignation package. On the collective decision to resign, Hay explained, the best way to put it, I think, is either we die quickly or we die slowly, which is very morbid, but it is what it is. That is the state of the world these days. So as for the disappointing realization that DOGE isn't all it claims to be, one former DDS official echoed sentiments that I know we've been expressing here for a while on TYT. They said they're not really using AI, they're not really driving efficiency. What they're doing is smashing everything. Yes, we know. So to that point, this isn't the only tech or efficiency-minded department that DOGE has targeted. According to Politico, several other digital modernization efforts within the government have met similar fates. The US Digital Service, which helped the government modernize its technology and attract tech talent, has now been subsumed by DOGE amid mass layoffs and firings. A program called 18F, a technology unit within the GSA, was eliminated by DOGE as well. As for the DDS functions, what they were actually doing there at the Pentagon, they're reported to be absorbed by the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office, which is the broader department that the DDS fell under. So this is very, very sad, because almost all the people who at least spoke to Politico, what they said is that, they would not have quit their jobs. They wouldn't have left their jobs unless they felt the pressure from DOGE to do so. And so they succumbed to the pressure because, as they said, it was going to happen now on their terms, or it was going to happen later on DOGE's terms. So it feels good to have a little bit of power, I guess, wherever you can find it, just take it. But it's really sad to see, though, what's happening here. And this particular department, I think, is worth talking about, because they're exactly the kind of department that DOGE says they want to be in cahoots with, right? They were doing the type of things that DOGE says they want to do. And so in eliminating this department or pressuring them to quit, they're really just going against their own directive. What do you think?
Obviously, I echo your sentiments. There just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the DOGE cuts. Like, I get it. Elon went into Twitter. He fired like 80% of the staff. People said Twitter would never be able to function that way. And Twitter mostly, it sucks as an experience, but it mostly does work still, right? And so Elon could be like, oh, you idiots told me not to fire all of these people. And guess what? I fired them and Twitter still works. Okay, cool. The government doesn't work that way, okay? You fire a bunch of air traffic controllers, people will die. Twitter doesn't work for a day. Okay, I can't get off some snazzy tweets for a few hours. Life goes on. You fire a bunch of government employees that are literally keeping the metaphorical trains running on time. There will be tangible problems in American citizens' lives. The DOD is no different. And this segment that was doing a lot of, kind of cybersecurity kind of stuff, again, no different. This is like, the idea would be to be making these guys more efficient at their jobs, more effective at what they're tasked to do, not to like get them out of there. But this is sort of in line with the entire administration so far. You take the kernel of something that broadly, I think most Americans would support. Just the idea that, the government might have some bloat, like DOD itself. We might be buying, a surplus of weapons from some weapons manufacturer. We might be, some contractor is overbilling us for something that they're doing for us. Americans will broadly agree that the government has some bloat, we should probably cut it. They take that scintilla, that little kernel of truth, and do something completely ridiculous, stupid, haphazard, and anti-productive or counterproductive. Excuse me. Same with immigration. I myself am a first-gen American. My parents, all the people who raised me, are immigrants. I can understand people who in the last 4 years, 10 million new immigrants under Biden, border towns in Texas and Arizona, places like Chicago and New York, feeling like They're a bit overrun and overwhelmed. They don't have the capacity or resources to help these people get adjusted in American life. Being like, oh, maybe we kind of went overboard with the immigration stuff. We should probably send some people back. Again, that's not my opinion, but I can see somebody reasonably coming to that conclusion, and the Trump administration be like, all right, we're gonna run with that. Except instead of just being like, all right, we're gonna do more border security, people who don't have a legitimate process, as many of these asylum seekers or whatever, who don't have a legitimate claim. All right, sorry guys, you gotta go back to your country. Instead, no. Let's send these people with no due process to concentration camps and make a big show of it. And on we go with the tariffs. You can say, you know what? These trade deals from the 90s and the 70s, they screwed American workers. We wanna bring manufacturing work back to America. In fact, we need the capacity to manufacture stuff, especially high-tech goods. If we ever get into an actual beef with somewhere like China, all right, we need this stuff. Instead, we get this blunt force instrument of tariffs across the board, no precision. They don't take a scalpel, they take a freaking sledgehammer to everything. And I hate to be this cliche anti-Trump administration person and call them stupid, call Republicans dumb. Oh, we're the smart side, we're the brainy side. I kind of like scoff at that notion a lot of times when liberals or leftists take that tact towards the right. But I'm sorry, this is dumb. And when it's not dumb, it's completely cruel. Like there's just no charitable way to look at any of this stuff.
Yeah. It's hard to not call it dumb when actual experts, economists, are also calling this dumb. And
conservative economists, conservative lawyers, conservative commentators are like, guys, I want to run with Trump on this. I don't. There's nothing there. There's no sense.
And we all saw that chart. And we had analysts look at the chart and they're like, where do they come up with these numbers? And also the numbers that they came up with, like just to get those numbers for one country would have taken so much research and so much data analysis. And then they're like, oh, here it is for like 200 different countries and we just did it. That's not how it works. But actually, Waz, you did touch on something interesting. That's how cults work, when they take some kind of universal truth or some sentiment that no one would argue against, something like, we don't want our children to get trafficked. Obviously, who's gonna argue with that? Or you say things like, we don't want the government to run inefficiently. Like, obviously, nobody wants their tax dollars to be spent in a dumb way. That's all that our democracy is really built on. That's why we have two parties. We say, I like how that party is gonna spend my tax dollars versus how this party is gonna spend my tax dollars. But then they take that and they say, you know what? If you don't support everything we're doing, then you obviously love inefficient government, which is crazy. And everybody knows it's crazy except for the people who fall for it. And that's the people who are in this, de facto cult. Well, I'm being nice when I say that. And it all just feels very inefficient too, which is the irony of all of this. In this particular case, they're firing the people at the DDS, or they're pressuring them to quit, right? These are the people who are doing real, good, tangible work, people who are actually doing things to help the government run more efficiently. And they're helping to integrate AI into the government. How does getting rid of those people make the government work more efficiently? Also, just in general, even if that wasn't their specific role, how does getting rid of more people help the government to run more efficiently? You're making more people do more work that they don't know how to do. That's just gonna slow everything down. But you kind of touch on this too. The government is not a business. And I keep saying you're not supposed to run a government like a business because the goals are not the same. With a business, efficiency is king, right? You want to maximize your profits and you want to cut your costs as much as possible. Like nothing else really matters when it comes to a business. But with a government, you have to consider the people. You are governing people. You're not running a business. You're not managing money. That's a part of it, but it really is not the whole picture. So anyway, I do want to get on to this next story. So let's roll the tape on this one. Some good news.
Independents feel that Donald Trump has vacated the center of the electorate, catering to his base. What are we talking about? Well, let's talk about the overall net approval ratings. We're going to look at the worst ever at this point in a presidency. The old record among independents for the worst ever was Donald Trump back in 2016, a net approval rating of minus 16 points. Well, Donald Trump has broken his own record here. He now holds, in this particular term, the worst ever net approval rating at this point in a presidency among independents at, get this, minus 22 points.
I like this guy. I like his energy. I like the way he talks. But the numbers get even worse for Trump when you focus on the #1 issue, the economy. Take a look.
Let's take a look at Trump's net approval rating on it and look at the trend line over just the last few months. You go back to January, he was slightly above water with independents at +1 point. Look at this drop, Kate. Oh my, minus 29 points. That's a 30-point drop in under 3 months of time. If you go back through the record books, I simply put, Kate Baldwin, can't find anything close to this. This is such a record that there is no historical analogy to be 29 points underwater on the most important issue of the day with independents. This right here, my dear friends, is political poison.
Oh my God, no historical analogy, political poison. What is behind these shockingly low numbers? You probably won't be surprised to find out that it is Trump's tariffs. They are a huge factor in all of this because, as I mentioned in the earlier story, there's no one else to blame but Trump for this one. So here's more from Enton.
A clear plan for tariffs and trade among independents. Look at this, 57% say no. He doesn't even have a clear plan for what he should be doing with tariffs and trade. And when asked whether or not they like the idea of additional tariffs, guess what percentage of independents say no, that they oppose it? It is 2/3. It is 66% of independents who oppose new tariffs. They don't like anything that's coming out of Donald Trump's right now, absent maybe immigration. But when it comes to the economy, when it comes to overall, when it comes to tariff, it's a threesome for negativity among independents. They oppose, oppose, oppose.
All right, so those numbers might look bad for Donald Trump, but today Enton actually reported on some good news for the president. So let's watch that.
I hear all these stories, all these articles. All the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024, we got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then you ask, okay, the same question to Kamala Harris voters, and it turns out the numbers are rather similar. So if there was a repeat, if folks got to be able to redo their vote that they had back in 2024, would the result be any different? I doubt it would be. Well, in February of 2017, 4% of Trump voters say they'd shift their vote. That's actually slightly more than the 3% this time around.
Was I think on the left, we want to hear that these Trump people, we want to believe that these Trump people are finally seeing the error of their ways. And we are seeing some stories like that coming out on social media, TikTok, on X, wherever. But on the whole, Trump supporters still very much support Trump. They still believe that he's going to pull out a win at the end of this, right? Sometimes in our leftist bubble, sometimes it can seem like that's not the case. But the reality is that it's very, very hard, especially at this point, the way politics is so polarized in this country. It is very rare to see somebody completely switch parties or completely switch ideologies. And also there's, the sunk cost fallacy that these people have invested so much of their time and energy, their entire personalities into supporting Trump, that it is a huge ask for people on the left to be like, can you just switch over? Like, do you finally get it? Do you think that there ever will be a mass exodus of people from supporting Trump to not supporting Trump? Or do you think that the left just needs to let go of that hope and move on and try to figure something else out?
I think there's a few things at work here. Donald Trump is a singular figure in the sense that many of the people that vote for him just like him personally. They don't care about what the policy is or how he's gonna get there. They just think he has a compelling personality. It is a cult of personality. And so again, folks gotta remember, Biden's fortunes didn't turn until 9 months into his presidency after the Afghanistan war pullout, which obviously all of us supported, but it did tank his approval. He got killed in the media for this, and it kind of never turned around for us. It's been basically 3 months of Donald Trump. It's very, very, very early in the game. Another thing that people have to realize, as much as we've, everybody, experts, lay people, normal people with 401ks, people with, stock portfolios, et cetera, as much as, everybody can recognize that these policy ideas, especially as it pertains to tariffs in the economy, are disastrous, the results haven't kicked in yet. We haven't had mass layoffs yet. We haven't had a stock market nosedive. We haven't had tangible, material effects of Trump's dumbheadedness yet. And so to expect people to feel like, oh, this guy's been a disaster when nothing's tangibly happened yet. No government agency that DOGE has cut funding to fail somebody, yet. This stuff hasn't happened yet. There hasn't been some environmental disaster where the EPA could have stepped in and they didn't, or some kind of basically government oversight that wasn't in place because of DOGE, or people's stock portfolio and retirements get tanked. This stuff hasn't happened yet. And so I do think it's pretty early. And I think another example to think about is George W. Bush in 2004, 2005, after destroying John Kerry. He got reelected. Republicans ascended in both houses of Congress. And it just looked like, wow, we're gonna be Republican from now until kingdom come. And then what happened? Disastrous war in Iraq. Bush got cocky talking about privatizing Social Security, which obviously is a no-no. Got creamed for it. Katrina response, disaster, and then on and on and on. It went until by the time Barack Obama and the Dems run against the Republicans in 2008, George Bush is widely seen as the worst president ever. This he went from literally feeling like the Republicans were gonna have majorities forever to this guy is a disaster to the point that we elected the first Negro in the history of the country. So folks need to realize that it's very early. A lot of the horrible nature of Trump's policies have yet to be felt by everyday people. But believe me, if this guy keeps it going with this China trade war, if he keeps it going with this harebrained, disgustingly evil immigration policy, if he keeps it going down this way, it's going to have an effect, I promise you.
Yeah, I agree, but it is interesting because Trump supporters, they won't believe that bad things are happening until it happens to them directly. Sometimes, right? They don't think that the economy tanking is a problem because their portfolios haven't been hit or their bank accounts or whatever, but they will believe that terrorists are just running rampant around the country, even though there hasn't been any reported terrorism, even though they haven't seen any terrorists, or even though they haven't been personally terrorized by anyone really. So it really, they just pick and choose things. And the reason why they do it is because, like you said, it is a cult of Trump's personality, right? They have to support him. We're even seeing it from members of Congress, right? Where they come out not to defend democracy, not to defend the country, not to defend their constituents, but to defend the president. That's not how this country is supposed to work. And the Republicans, they do need to seriously start thinking about what's gonna happen if and when this guy is out of there, because presumably he'll be out of there within the next 4 years. I guess we'll see what happens there. But anyway, we do need to take our next break, so we will be right back. Hey everyone, welcome to the social break. Let's get to some of your comments and see what's going on. All right, Sassy Dragon says, just got here, Waz. Very excited to see Waz today. So some love for Waz in the comments. Art Guy says, well, this giant mural isn't going to finish itself, so I'll listen while I work. Stay strong, everyone. That's so cool. I wish I could paint. I can't paint. I paint my walls, but there's no murals on it. But it would be really cool to see what you're working on. Ian Golbis says, the problem with this country is we have people who believe Musk is doing productive work. And I think that is a very encompassing statement to have made, because that is a big part of the country, a big part of the problem in this country, because it says so much about the things that we value, the things that we believe about the people in charge and about these billionaires. And I don't really know why people still fall for people like Elon Musk. Trump-Loy, he says that's how it's pronounced, says, break it down, Waz. Yes, that's why we love to have him on the show. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, are Trump's poll numbers completely underwater, even from the standpoint of water? Is a very good question. We will ask Waz. We'll ask the water. Oh, Waz. I don't think Waz knows. Mark NYC says, oh, this is nice. Okay. Yaz is consistently correct when she points out that it's MAGA independence memory at election time that matters. Will Trump gaslight America when it counts for him? Likely. And yeah, I mean, like we all expect an October surprise, right? We all know that Trump is doing all this stuff at the very, very beginning of his term. I think Waz was kind of alluding to this also when he was speaking. He's doing all this right as soon as he gets into office, because he's hoping that things will balance out by the time election season comes up, even though he's not supposed to be reelected. He's not supposed to be up for reelection, but not just for him, but for the sake of the entire Republican Party. I think they're all hoping that this gamble pays off, or they're just going to pretend like it did, even if it didn't. So the verbose dragon says, does anyone else want to see the charts of Trump's approval numbers yeeting themselves off a cliff? Seeing the steep angles would be so much more satisfying than the numbers. That would be more fun. Maybe CNN can take a note from you. Let's see what's going on over at on Twitch. Conservative Wambulance says, 4 years subbing on Twitch. Love you guys. Thank you very much. And Suspicious Dragon 92 says, he's MS-13 equals he's just an obviously Hispanic male between the ages of 18 and 35. That's what MS-13 means to Republicans. And I hope that isn't true, but it might be. Be right back. Welcome back to the show. You have Yaz and Waz in tonight without Jenk and Anna. They're not here tonight, but let's get into this next story.
New data coming out from the U.S. government yesterday that showed a 10% drop in March of non-citizens arriving at U.S. airports. And it won't surprise you probably to know that the biggest year-over-year declines were from Canadians, people flying in from Mexico, and from Europe.
All right, so as part of the fallout from Trump's tariffs, as well as his incessant provocation of the Canadian people, i.e. his threats to annex them and his accusations that they're funneling fentanyl into our country, et cetera, travel into the US from foreign countries, specifically Canada, Mexico, and Europe, is down in a very big way. So big, in fact, that according to experts, the US economy is expected to lose billions of dollars in 2025 in lost revenue from tourism and boycotts of American products. Last month, arrivals of non-citizens into the US by plane dropped by almost 10%. Also, Goldman Sachs has estimated that in the worst case scenario, accounting for both travel and purchasing boycotts, the US could see a total hit of 0.3% to gross domestic product, which translates into a whopping $90 billion loss. So 0.3% doesn't sound like a lot, but it's $90 billion. According to the International Trade Administration, or the ITA, the US took in a record $254 billion last year from international travelers. And prior to all of this Trump drama that we're experiencing right now, projections for 2025 and 2026 were expected to meet and then exceed pre-pandemic levels of travel from non-citizens. And we're already starting to see the effects starting to play out. In March, hotel rates and airfares and car rental costs, those all dropped. And the Northeast was hit particularly hard, presumably because Canadians aren't visiting that region anymore. So looking ahead to this summer, Canadian flight reservations to the US are down 70% through September compared to the same period last year, and Europe to US bookings are down 25%. Reports of longer wait times at customs and immigration, as well as stories of detentions, like harsh detentions of European travelers in American airports, could also be contributing to these declining air sales. And business travel also looks to be impacted. It's not just pleasure travel. So let's look at that.
But we've also recently seen moves in corporate travel start to show up. We reported last night and yesterday afternoon that AIMCO, the Alberta Pension Fund, has told its staff that it will be curbing trips to the U.S. They'll be able to go for some reasons, but not for like conferences and speaking engagements. And last night we reported that the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, a pretty major research hospital in Canada, has advised the staff not to go to the U.S. and has given them all sorts of advice about what to do if they do have to go to the U.S. in terms of like, cleaning up their laptop and taking a burner phone that doesn't have your personal data on it. It's somewhat hard to believe we're talking about this in the realm of Canadian-U.S. travel, but that's where we are. And as long as people remain concerned, it's likely these numbers are going to be soft.
Well, I think this is really sad. I love Canada. I love visiting Canada. I go to Canada a lot, actually, because I have a lot of family there. And I'm originally from Connecticut. And so when I was younger, we used to just drive up to Toronto all the time. I've seen Niagara Falls so many times, like more times than anyone needs to see this one particular waterfall. But I've been to Niagara Falls so many times. And it is sad, but I can't say that I blame the Canadians for not wanting to come to the United States anymore. The reasons as to why all of this is happening is very obvious, but do you think that Trump considered that this might happen, that this might be like a side effect when he was rolling out all of these tariffs and bullying other countries, especially when he was antagonizing the Canadians? Like they're right there. Why would you be so mean to them? And it's such a beautiful country too. Or do you think this is just part of like the short-term pain before we get to see the long-term gain that he keeps promising us?
No, he didn't consider it. And no, nobody on his team pushed back. Stephen Miller is in charge of his immigration regime, right? Like this guy is a maximalist, anti-immigration person. So no, nobody brought this to attention. I don't think Trump actually gives a damn about any of this. I think he does have some level of racial resentment, anti-immigration, like an instinct for that. But I don't think he cares about this stuff as much as he does the tariffs. Like he's been talking about tariffs for 40 years, literally since the 80s. Back then he was complaining about the Japanese allegedly ripping us off because Americans prefer Toyota and Honda to freaking, I don't know, Saturn or whatever, right? And so I don't think anybody told him this. And as far as like Canadians and Mexicans, okay, first of all, Canada, like our country, is a very multicultural country. If you find out that these idiots are just grabbing people off the street who might be Palestinian or who might vaguely be Middle Eastern and against or be accused of being anti the Israeli government's regime in the Gaza Strip, and you could get snatched up, put in some freaking holding cell, and be treated like some damn criminal, why the hell would you come to America? Now, if you're a white bread, you probably got nothing to worry about, but at the same time, like again, Canada is a very multicultural and diverse country. Same for Mexico. These are brown people. They're rounding up Venezuelans and El Salvadorians and Mexicans. Okay, they're rounding up people that they identify as vaguely Hispanic or Latin. And just what if you get mistaken for a Salvadorian and you're Mexican? And they send you to literally a gulag where dudes are beating you up and starving you to death. Why the hell would you voluntarily come up here to vacation at that, to have fun? Now, there are people, that risking their lives, their safety to come up here, make money for their family and stuff like that. And you understand why they're making a certain kind of sacrifice. Did I freeze for you guys?
Yeah, you did. All right, so we'll get back to Waz in a little bit, but yeah, to Waz's point, it is very dangerous to travel to this country now. And there's been a lot of reports specifically for international travelers coming from Europe, from France and Germany, who said that they've been harassed in American airports. Who wants to deal with that? Who doesn't have to deal with it? And also, I would say that I don't think Trump really considered the loss of international tourist money as much as he probably should have, because I feel like he's so arrogant that he's like, well, of course they'll come. Of course they'll still want to come here. This is the greatest country in the world. So anyway, Waz, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, do you want to finish your thought?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, as a Haitian American, if they were rounding up a bunch of Jamaicans, even if I'm not Jamaican, I'd be like, damn, I'm pretty adjacent to that. Like, I would not be coming to this country. Like, straight up, if you're a Mexican person and you're not coming here to make money, you're coming here to spend money in our economy. Enjoy yourself, vacation, sightsee, enjoy some of the beautiful things our great country has to offer. And you hear they rounded up Salvadorians, rounding up Venezuelans, no due process, treating anybody as if they're hardened criminals. Hell no, I'm staying my ass where I'm at, sorry.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I mean, I'm a brown woman. My family,
better watch out.
See, like it's weird, because like I was born in Connecticut. My family's from Guyana in South America, so it's like I'm not Middle Eastern. I'm not anything that like would turn up on a terrorist watch list, but I look like what I look like because I'm Indian.
Close, hey man, keep your papers close. You close enough,
like
they
these
for your
racist
ass.
people, like they're not the most like geographically, historically intelligent. Also, that's in my own experience. If you're gonna be racist, like you're probably just like you don't know what you're talking about. So, anyway, on that note, on that pleasant note, we're gonna wrap up this first hour. I think who do you have? John and Bret in the next hour. So that'll be fun for you guys. All right. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Soror.
Dr. Phil.
Adam Greene drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk a
about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, look at what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
Yes. Congratulations on all your success. You guys are everywhere. It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't think about
This is
that.
a happy experience. You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Welcome back, one and all, to the second hour of the Young Turks with me, John Derola, and as you can see, Bret Ehrlich. Bret, how's it going?
It feels like a Friday on the damage report. The only difference is I got 2 more days of work after this.
That's the main thing. And instead of us throwing away the trash, I'm co-hosting with it. Oh, that was mean. I'm sorry.
John, I've had a really rough day. My dogs woke me up in the middle of the night.
Oh my God, don't steal my trauma.
Stolen, opposite of valor.
Is there literally one person in the world who's not pretending to be me online? Anyway,
John, we have time. They oddly ended on time. They ended an hour of TYT on time. It's weird.
First time.
I'm at a point in my life. I was telling Alyssa during the test for my video, but like, have you ever had this part of your day where like your hair in your nose finally has grown all the way across your nose and is tickling the other side of your nostril?
No, I have not had that.
Go back if this happens to you. Just
Are you one
literally
of the
cut
creatures
off
from
your
The
nose.
Last of Us?
Where
Spite your
face.
are coming
That
out?
might be what it is.
I think you're a stalker, actually, is what they're called these days. But anyway, I apologize for the pain that you're feeling, nose-wise. Other people were feeling pain at a town hall in Georgia, thanks to tasers. There's a transition for you. But anyway, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about a lot of other news. We've got some interesting stuff, some fun stuff, important news, people being terrible. You know, it's TYT, it's that sort of thing. So Bret, why don't we jump into our first topic, beginning with this.
Illegal alien criminals, cartels, and terrorists that are not just living at the border. Ladies and gentlemen, they're all inside the interior of the United States.
How about the KKK?
All inside the interior of the United States.
The terrorist group going after black and
You can head out. The protest is outside. Thank you very much. Protest is outside.
You want money tickets. You want money tickets.
You can head out. The protest is outside. The propaganda's in here. You got to keep those segregated, as you must keep all things. So that's Marjorie Greene. She's having her little town hall, and that woman who I think raises a really good point, which we'll talk about, is not the only person who got removed. Now, she thankfully was just removed. Other people were the recipients of a little bit of state violence, so that's fun. But what you saw there was Marge trying to spread her little talking points that she is so desperate to cling to from before the election, that we are obviously awash in millions of migrant murderers. And so the Constitution, just set that aside. Don't worry about all that. We can do literally whatever we want to get rid of these people. And I know what you're thinking. All the studies show that the vast majority of the people we're deporting have no criminal record whatsoever, but ignore that. Wouldn't it be better if they were murderers? Would you shut up and just sit down and let us do whatever we want if they were murderers? So the woman brings up the KKK. Okay, well, that's a terrorist organization. It's literally a terrorist organization with a multi-century history of doing terrible things. She gonna say one single word about them? Should they be deported to El Salvador? They're hardly black or brown. Forget about them. And so you had a number of people who were interrupting it. And look, at these sorts of town halls, if you yell, if you interrupt, they're generally gonna make you leave. But it got more violent than just that. So she had barely reached the podium to speak when one man stood up and started yelling, booing, and jeering at her. And she didn't like that. I know you'd probably think she'd be used to it by now, but she was taken aback. So her supporters, which exist, stood and clapped. So police officers grabbed the man and dragged him out of the room. They also used a stun gun on him twice after failing to put his arms behind his back. And he wasn't the only person that got stunned. So Greene began to play a video of former President Barack Obama discussing the national debt. He contributed to it, so that's bad. The fact that Trump added $8 trillion to the national debt, I'm sure also probably had a video presentation from Greene. But anyway, another guy was removed. This is Johnny Keith Williams of Georgia. He had started to heckle her. They stunned him as well. 6 people in total were escorted out. 3 were arrested and 2 were hit with stun guns, which are referred to as non-lethal, but of course people have died thanks to those. So, not as raucous as some of the town halls, although it's hard to imagine that it's just a coincidence that it's Greene's town hall where we're all of a sudden having the weapons being used. There's been disruptions of Republican town halls for months now, and this is the first I've seen of stun guns, Bret, but what do you think?
Not as raucous as some of the town halls. What happened? Did someone explode a glitter bomb or something? Was there shrapnel? There's a stun, you just told stun gun stories. I always wondered, I guess I assumed that at every time that if we were to join Marjorie Taylor Greene in the middle of whatever she's doing, I mean, it was amazing that the first thing she said was illegal aliens. She's always talking like this. This is a thing where it's so weird. You have some people be like, can we please treat all individuals with some modicum of respect and at least listen to people when they're discussing their identities or anything? And it's you guys are psychopaths, right? But Marjorie Taylor Greene is spinning whole yarns about hordes and hordes of secret gangs that are trying to kidnap your child at night. And how are they not treated like psychos? It's because we've gone nose blind to the psychoness. It's such a weird position we're in. We're that is insane. What was said before, the woman in the audience was that's crazy. She heard something, so she said something. And everyone just kind of goes along with it. It's this weird defense of Trump where it's oh, he's just lying. Oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene, oh, she's just kind of stupid and a weirdo. So she just kind of says the vaguely party line things that the Republicans have been kind of elbowing into normalcy for years and years and years. And we're just supposed to sit down and take it.
Yeah.
It's so strange, but it's so sad at the same time.
Yeah, it's really gross to see someone with at least a little bit of power. I mean, she doesn't really have any independent power. She's just gonna do whatever Donald Trump tells her to do, but that she's just a random gross bigot. That's all that she is. She happened to be in an area that's red enough that you can just be a gross, dumb bigot and still get elected. And so she stands up there and does she even know the analyses of like those who've been sent to Venezuela, like 77% had no criminal record whatsoever, including like shoplifting, littering, anything like that. And then once you include those, it's basically like the sorts of criminals she's talking about was like less than 1% of those who were deported. And I think that's not just a thing to point out because it makes her look stupid and wrong. That would be enough. I would do it if that was all it was. But it's more important than that. It's a refutation of the entire narrative. If there were actually all of these terrible criminals, rapists, murderers, all of that, then they'd be packing planes with them and they'd be advertising every one. Fox News would just be Jesse Waters showing like a brown face and then listing all the victims as he, I'm not gonna say what he's doing under the table at the same time, but he'd be very excited about it, okay? But they're not doing that because they can't do that because they don't have those sorts of criminals. It's not true because it wasn't true when they were saying it. And that is good news for America. I understand if you're like in MAGA, you're like, no, it's my precious narrative, don't take it from me. No, it's good to find out that apparently your country actually isn't filled with terrible foreign-born murderers. That's a good thing. You should not shy away from good news. You should embrace it. Marjorie Greene, same to you. You should embrace that news. But she doesn't embrace inconvenient things. Truths, constituents. She was like heckling those people, basically, like insulting them as they're asking questions. Why don't we play a little bit more from the town hall?
What are you doing to protect us in the 14th district from the damage and extreme hardship of Trump's tariffs? Gutting of Social Security and Medicaid. Wow. DOGE gutting our government with a chainsaw approach and the utter destruction and ignoring of our Constitution and rule of law. He is not well physically or mentally, and he's making nonsensical orders based on his whim of the day. How are you going to rein him in to protect us? Oh, poor Christina. Poor Christina. Well, I'm sure, Christina, you think that you're pretty smart. But the reality is you are being completely brainwashed by whatever source of news you listen to. The facts are this. No one has lost their Social Security. No one has lost their benefits. Criminals have lost it. And if you want to defend those people where you hate our country and you hate America, what am I going to do? I am going to stand by my president.
No, you will. There's a little bit of hypocrisy there that you're standing by your president who is himself guilty of literally dozens of felonies. You're standing by him, an actual criminal. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, no crimes at all. So why is it that he doesn't have a criminal record, but you talk about him as if he's a terrorist? Donald Trump already adjudicated, civilly responsible for sexual assault, literally dozens of felonies, and more than likely would have suffered more guilty verdicts for felonies if the Supreme Court hadn't swooped in and saved him. And like you go through that laundry list, and I appreciate that she read the entire thing. You could read that as her being brave enough to read the entire thing before answering. For me, it's that I think that her grasp on literacy is so tenuous that she can't read something while simultaneously seeing the rest of the paragraph out of the corner of her eye. It's an important skill, like when you're presenting news or when you're doing a town hall. She doesn't have it, unfortunately. She got through the entire sentence. Some of the words started to trip her up a little bit. But what exactly was Christina wrong about? The trade war is not going to cause hardships, not going to cause prices to go up. It obviously is going to do that. Nobody's lost Social Security. We've literally profiled individuals that have. You don't get to cut the regional staff by 80%, shut down the online services, and assume that's probably gonna not have any negative effect whatsoever. And notice she mentioned that Christina was wrong, I guess, about Medicaid cuts, but then didn't actually talk about it anymore because in a day or two, she's going to be voting for massive cuts to Medicaid. That's her plan right now. She needs to pretend that Christina, she watches Rachel Maddow, she's clearly crazy or whatever. But Marjorie Greene knows exactly how right she is. And she knows that Donald Trump is flouting not only the law, but the Constitution. She knows that because she loves that. She doesn't want him to comply with it. Due process is not in her system of values, and she's fine with the fact that it's not in Donald Trump's either. And so, like, she's the congressperson, she's behind the podium, but Christina clearly, objectively deserves that position more than Marjorie Greene. Bro, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like it when she's like, listen, you've been brainwashed by your news source, and that's our news source's job. My job is to brainwash you. Like, she is trying to justify Trump's approach to tariffs as some kind of strategy. It is not. It is giving button masher in Street Fighter 2. Like that is Trump's entire strategy. I don't know if people are from the same generation I'm from, but we used to have these arcade games. One of them was called Street Fighter 2, and you get someone who was really great and memorized all the button sequences to do the moves. And then you'd go up against someone who was just mashing all the buttons. Usually that person would lose to the person who knew what they were doing, but occasionally the person mashing the buttons would land a jab or 1,000-hand slap. And they would claim victory as being this wildly skilled person, but that is what Trump is doing.
Well,
and Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to paint him as being this kind of international economic genius when all he's done is like bankrupted casinos.
I love your metaphor, but I think the accurate metaphor in this would be that he was button mashing, he lost, and then claimed victory. Because the stock market is still down. Prices are still gonna be going up. We still have the tariff on China is 245% right now. That is not a win. He did not win. They are declaring victory because he cut the stock market by 20%, and then it went back up 11, and now they're cheering, they're celebrating. That's a loss to any rational person.
There is no rationality. The more I think about it, I feel bad for Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she's earned better than that. I mean, has she ever, during an official proceeding, heckled someone from the audience besides the State of the Union? No. Maybe if there is some kind of justice in this world, next time she heckles a president, she gets tased and escorted out.
Maybe.
And it's weird because she should be nicknamed Taserface.
Okay, I'll be thinking about that as we go to our first break. We're gonna respond to some comments, come back with some more news. So don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. You obviously alluded to her interrupting the State of the Union and getting all aggrieved. Like that's your brand. That would be like if Lauren Boebert like interrupted town hall to be like, there's some two people out there, they're fondling each other, and that's disrespectful. No, that's on brand. That's allowed at that point. You can do that. That's like when I make like a crass joke to Bret. He's earned that, okay?
Anyway, John. Here's what John does, by the way, when we're on Damage Report, is I'll be gross. And he'll be like, that's disgusting. This is the damage report. And then I'll watch the next Monday, and John is the grossest. He'll make like way grosser jokes than I made the last week.
Okay, I generally have a pretty good filter, but again, basically every night the last week, my dogs have kept me up for like 90 minutes in the middle of the night, and my brain isn't working, so I can't dial it back. Anyway, let's jump to some comments. Over on Twitch, Brooke Mark says, ew, Bret on the left side of the screen and John on the right. This feels weird. I wonder how the TDs choose.
I'm moving you to this side, John, because I'm
interesting.
Tired.
No, I don't care.
No, this makes more sense. You can see, like, I also have a good side and a bad side. Like, this is my good side. And then when I look at you, look at that side.
I don't know which side is my good side.
This is my bad side. Like, you might not be able to tell, but this is my bad side.
I think that's an improvement in every measurable way. Occam's Taser says, her arch nemesis, words. That's good, Occam's Taser. I like that. Do you think she knows? Do you think she knows how ignorant she sounds with every sound that leaves her face hole? Like she just can't control it. That's how dumb she is that she can't even fake it.
Like,
I just want to hear her read out loud again.
But like the worst thing in politics is something other than that, sadly.
No, I get it.
It's like politicians speak. is actually lower
No, this
than
just
just
bothers. I'm not saying this is
genuine
objectively.
stupidity.
This bothers me all. That's all. Raymond gifted 10 memberships on the Young Turks. Thank you. Super nice of you. Kyle Wary says, John and Bret, yes. I like that ending. I wasn't sure where that was going. I thought it might be no, but I'm glad. Jeffrey Doty says, TOT is the most honest news source I've found in my 55 years of life. Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. Ida Vetri says, John and Bret, love these two goofballs. Thank you. Christina Elisa Brown says, OMG Bret, then with like 10 heart eye emojis and then like 7 fire emojis.
Yeah. I'm very sexually.
I think the website might be, I think it's putting the wrong emojis in. We're gonna have to look into that. Nightmare Dice Dragon says, I'm so happy. TDR on the main show.
Infiltrated.
I just hope that this doesn't kill the vibe on our Friday. We're not spent at that point, but we'll have to see.
I can go
Okay,
again.
Amy says it's gross to see unnecessary tasing, and I hope that someone sues the police and MTG. Yeah, like imagine if that happened at like an AOC thing. You don't think that she'd be asking for the police to show restraint, even if it's someone she disagrees with?
But like,
it's
I
just
hate
class. She doesn't have it.
But we're the crazy ones. Like that's what's so weird.
And
That's
radical.
the gaslighting of the nation.
100%, yeah. Anyway, well, with that said, we got more news to get to. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Young Turks with John and Bret. Thank you for being here. We've got more news. Let's do it.
I thought it was the Republicans that wanted lower taxes and the Democrats that wanted higher taxes, although I guess that's not always true. I thought the Republicans wanted to reward success, not punishing it. This loose talk about a higher top, another new bracket for millionaires. I don't think it's a crime to be a millionaire, by the way. Small businesses would pay this top bracket. I do not understand this. I can't believe Mr. Trump's going to go along with this. I don't understand, and I can't believe what I'm hearing. It's giving me a headache.
All right.
Tax day should be tax cut day.
We'll get you some Advil.
That was yesterday with Larry Kudlow almost dying. He was so shocked to find out that Republicans might raise taxes on the highest earners, the wealthiest Americans. But is that a real possibility? No, but we're gonna go through the various Republicans that are pretending briefly that it will be, so that people don't know that the entire point of electing a Republican president is to hand $5 to $10 trillion to the wealthiest people in America. If you only learn one lesson about American politics, please let it be that one. But no, they're gonna pretend that they might raise taxes. So last week, Semaphore reported that Trump told Republican senators he's open to raising taxes on highest earners. And look, I don't even doubt that he said that, because you know why? He says lots of things that aren't true, but might be popular. Semaphore, could you catch up on the last 50 years of Donald Trump and what he does? He's not honest, okay? Anyway, according to the report, Senator Lindsey Graham asked Trump if he would be okay with letting taxes increase on the rich rather than including them in the massive tax cuts that Republicans want to pass, because obviously Lindsey Graham has also always been a crusader for a more equitable and fair tax system. The president replied that he'd be fine with the idea, according to 3 people. They told Semaphore that. Okay, so Lindsey Graham's on board and Trump is on board. But what about congressional Republicans? Will they actually do this? Well, last week, House Speaker Mike Johnson stated that Republicans are generally trying to cut taxes, which, yeah. And Andy Harris of the House Freedom Caucus, he's the chair of it, told Semaphore that he would support higher taxes for the wealthy. And we'll see about that. He said, if we slightly increase the rate on the highest earners or create $1 million earner bracket that's a little bit higher than the current highest level, which caps out far below $1 million, I'd be okay with that. Okay, that's interesting, and he's on the record. It's a specific quote to a specific outlet. Still don't believe it, but at least he's being specific. Senator Josh Hawley, who has occasionally split with Trump or the other Republicans on a few things, admittedly, he stated that higher taxes on the rich could be in play, though for the time being, he's primarily working on a child tax credit. He said, my colleagues and I go around on this. Their usual line on tax cuts is, we don't need to offset tax cuts. But anytime I bring up the child tax credit, they're like, well, we need to offset that. that. If the White House wants to offset that with a surcharge on billionaires, that's fine with me, but I might be in the minority of my party. Yeah, you might be. And I like the strategy. They work on the tax cuts. He works on the child tax credit. That way they can pass the tax cuts and then kill the tax credit. And that's basically what's probably going to happen. And some in leadership are more clear. Steve Scalise, House Majority Leader, told Fox Business, I don't support that initiative. So why are we playing this game? Look, here's the thing. Republicans have had about 2 solid months of absolutely horrid economic news that is not some act of God. It is specifically tied to their ideology and the choices that their God emperor is making. All of this is really hurting the perception of Republicans on the economy amongst the electorate. And you see that in polls that I'm sure have been covered here on the Young Turks. That's hurting their chances in the midterms and maybe damaging their reputation long term. So they need good press. And saying, without even promising and certainly not doing an actual tax increase on the wealthiest Americans is an easy way to try to offset a little bit of that. Again, Bret, I would love to be shocked and surprised and they actually raise the taxes. I have a hard time believing that's going to happen.
Right. It feels so arbitrary, but also not arbitrary and mostly partisan, or that where people like have a double standard. So like if you are tired of the Democrats or the Republicans for never like passing legislation and always just talking about passing the legislation that you want, why are you having faith in Trump on a semaphore headline? Like, I'll be principled. I'll say, do it. Do it. I dare you. I dare you. Do it. Tax the millionaires. Like, what's interesting to me is that this is going to be a tax on millionaires and not billionaires. Kudlow alluding to the fact that it would hurt small businesses and not enormous businesses. Enormous businesses that get all the benefits, the super rich millionaires who get all the benefits of the system that Trump creates and the uncertainty that he creates and the backdoor deals that he puts in place and the times he's like, I'm going to do this thing, and right before I turn back on the faucet of belay some of the tariffs, I'm going to tell a bunch of people, here's how you can make money. And then talking to everyone in like these secret meetings in the Oval Office that we get leaked videos of, like, look at how much money this guy made and that guy made. Do you think that was $1 million a year that guy made? No, that's he said it was, that guy made $100 million in that moment.
Yeah.
So do it. I would say to people, like, do you want to play hardball? Like, Donald Trump is clearly trying to just get more votes and more support from people, but he has to get more support. Like, you can give him your support if he gives you what you need.
Yeah.
But is he raising back up the corporate tax rate or the capital gains tax? No, he's cutting it. And that's the thing is, like, Scott Galloway talks about all this stuff, you know, in some of the videos that I can't get off my feed, and you know, but like it's an interesting point that like there's people who make money off of wages, and then there's people that make money off of investments, and all this income tax talk is people who make money off of wages. And I'm all for getting back to the marginal tax rates that we had when America was so great. Like, get back to those marginal tax rates. Like, I'll help you. But in the meantime, everything else that Trump has done has made it easier for the rich to get richer.
Yeah,
that's the problem. And then everything else he's done is like a fever dream of half a remembrance of something someone didn't actually tell him while he was hopped up on Big Macs when they said the word tariff. I think he like watched the first half of that part of Ferris Bueller's Day Off when he was explaining the Hawley Smoot Tariff Act before he said that it did not work and the United States sunk deeper into the Great Depression.
Yeah, so he still thinks the tariffs are a great idea, and he still thinks that you can just drive the Ferrari in reverse to take off the miles.
Yeah,
he's going to be surprised by the outcome of both of those things. Yeah, and Kudlow just so shocked. I don't think he's actually shocked that they're saying they're going to raise the taxes. I think he's shocked that they have to say that because even more Republican voters think they should raise those taxes. Because he just expects, wait, this is Fox News, Fox Business. Like, you guys are supposed to beat these people into submission, into believing that, as he puts it, a tax on wealthy people is like treating them like a criminal rather than just their expected contribution to America's shared success. And he says we're not supposed to be punishing success, we're supposed to be rewarding it. First of all, why? You already succeeded. Why do you also need a reward on top of that? Like, you, by definition, in your own thing, already succeeded. But that's the sort of just cheap, basic framing that he expects all of these people to accept. And some cracks are starting to form in it. He's seeing even, like, as we previously talked about, like more and more Republicans that find like the messaging of like an AOC or Bernie Sanders to be appealing. He doesn't like that Fox, at least in some areas, might be losing a little bit of their grip on the narrative. In any event, I think that we should move on to the next topic. We got a few things to get to, so why don't we jump into this? Look, there's certainly a lot of competition, but the story we're going to discuss in this video might be an example of one of the most brazen acts of corruption since Donald Trump retook office, which again is really something considering everything he's done with the tariffs and telling people to invest and all of that. But I'll let you be the judge. It involves his pick of former Republican Congressman Billy Long to run the Internal Revenue Service. So he picked him. His nomination is still currently pending in the Senate, but the Senate has confirmed basically everyone that Donald Trump has picked. And so it looks like he's gonna get in. And I'm not just saying that because it seems like they'll vote for him. Those who he will be in charge of, like the watching in his new role in the beat of the IRS, they sure seem to think that he's gonna win because he just received a massive financial handout from the exact people that he would be in charge of regulating and conducting oversight of when he becomes the head of the IRS. And it is as bad as it can be, and we're gonna give you all the details. So in new campaign finance filings, Long disclosed an outstanding personal loan of $130,000 that he had made to his failed 2022 US Senate campaign. The dormant Senate campaign committee had raised less than $36,000 in the last 2 years, which could have forced him to absorb the losses on the loan. He might have had to actually cover it. But after he was named by Trump to head the IRS, the committee suddenly raked in a ton of money, nearly $137,000 in less than 3 weeks in January, money that he then used to pay off what he would have had to pay off himself. So effectively, rather than him paying off over $100,000, those donors did. And it wasn't a broad-based thing, an upswelling of support of the peasant class or whatever. More than 2/3 of the contributions given to his committee in January were for $2,900. That is the maximum allowed donation for the 2022 election cycle. And here's the kicker, this is fun. At least 1/3 of the money came from donors working at firms in the tax consultancy industry or involved in major tax-related legal battles. And we'll talk about some of those legal battles. But look, obviously this is a payoff. They're paying the guy off in a way that's not technically bribery, it's only bribery, and they're allowed to do it. It's been legalized. They can hand over $100,000 to this guy, assuming that he will then go easy on them once he becomes the head of the IRS. And what is the alternative explanation? That nearly 3 years after a failed candidacy, a bunch of his constituents were like, I still think he can win this thing. And they decided to flood him with money. How is it even possible to donate money to a campaign that ended more than 2 years ago? That's not a rhetorical question. I mean, like legally, how is that possible to do? How is this, the fact that you can do this, anything other than an opening for exactly this sort of bribery, Bret?
Dude, it's money laundering.
It's money laundering. That's literally what it is.
Money laundering. Like at this point, just give him the money. Like give him the money on a big publisher's clearinghouse check. Like that, just be honest with me, dude. Like they owed, his job is to go after these guys. And they gave him money. Do you think he's more or less likely to go after these guys? And they did it like, I don't need to work at the IRS to see that looks fishy. Public Citizen has like this amazing tracker of conflicts of interest, by the way, in the Trump cabinet. And it's fantastic. It's got Nancy Beck is an EPA senior advisor who's been a lobbyist for like chemical companies. Pam Bondi has lobbied for a bunch of different people and also like was investigating Trump until he donated to her campaign and she stopped. What's his name? The guy from Road Rules. I thought that the reason that the Road Rules guy, Sean Duffy, was put in charge of the Department of Transportation was because he was on Road Rules or Real World or something. But no, the guy was a lobbyist for United Polaris. Like these are all foxes in charge of the hen house. And it's so insulting. And what's crazy to me is because of the Brinks trucks worth of cash that have backed up and been dumped on everybody, from the potential appointees to the potential appointers to the media apparatuses, like all of the so-called independent media apparatuses that the right leverages and has grown over the years through promoted videos that make their way into your feed and get most favored nation status when it comes to suggesting them in the future. I would conjecture all of it is so wildly corrupt, but it's still allowed to happen.
Yep.
It's
because
like,
the system itself is corrupt and allowed to.
But that also goes to cover up and launder the reputations of these people. There is this weird phenomenon where they're like, yo, at least Trump like tells it like it is, like he's an open book. No, he's not. And when he can be an open book, but written in that book is like the ledger of all the people in his cabinet and his executive branch that have been receiving bribes. Like, this is the stuff that you would expect that the cops are supposed to look for. And when they find it, they show up and be like, we're sending you the pen, see? But no, it's like, oh, we found it. We show it to people, no one cares. It's time for us to care. We do care. We care. We've been caring for years.
That's right. Look, on TDR, we've been profiling the chaos, crime, and corruption. There's a lot of it every day. The corruption, maybe more than anything else. It's wild. And I love the casual disrespect from Bret to Sean Duffy. The idea that he was picked to be transportation secretary just because he was on Real World Road Rules Challenge. No, as you said, he was a lobbyist for Polaris. He got that job just because he was on Real World Road Rules Challenge. He earned this one. Anyway.
We have a poll in the YouTube chat that's like, is this the most brazen corruption in the Trump, the second Trump White House yet? And right now the results are 69-31. Yes, it is.
I don't know, man. Launching the crypto stuff, that's pretty brazen. Did everybody forget? I know it was like 2 weeks ago. He just gave pardons to massive fraudsters who defrauded people with their corporations. Like stole millions from investors. The sort of thing that Larry Kudlow would refer to as punishing success. These are good investors. They defrauded them. Trump just let them go because they commit the same sorts of crimes that he does. There was no explanation. They're just free. They can just go and defraud more good investors. And by the way, you mentioned Public Citizen. I think they have a log of, there's like 200 investigations into corporate malfeasance and fraud, criminality that have already ended under the Trump administration. Like, it isn't just that he and his cabinet and his picks are committing personal acts of corruption. They are now causing the actual cops we have investigating corporate crime, and they have just surrendered. They've laid down their weapons, and now corporations know it's open war. You could do literally anything you want at this point, and they're not going to investigate you. Anyway, okay, we need to take our second break of the hour. More to come in creepier terms after this.
Go again.
Welcome back, one and all. I was just saying before we got started, Bret, I know, is a fan of The Studio on Apple TV. That's going to be back with a new episode today.
Dude,
super excited.
I love Apple TV.
It's kind of underrated. Yeah,
they only make shows for me. It's all the people I like, and one of the people who runs The Studio, last name is Ehrlicht.
He should probably give you a job. I think that would be the fair, nice thing to do.
Why do you think
but we're entering into good time of TV. We got The Last of Us is back. Andor is coming soon. Handmaid's Tale is back. So lots of good stuff.
I think on old school, they should review these things and post it on what the flick.
Most people don't know. Can I restart What the Flick? Do we still have that?
I think we should. I'm down. I'll do that
literally,
tomorrow.
I will stop the politics if I can start What the Flick. We used to do, most people don't know this because it's been so many years. We used to do reviews of movies and shows. We did live responses to like 4 seasons of Game of Thrones in studio, all of us. We don't even see each other on a daily basis in the studio anymore. But anyway,
John, I'm not even kidding. Let me show you this. Hang on, really quick. Can we go to my one shot really quick? I'll show you. I have it set up.
That's
this is the setup for it. I can record it.
Okay, let's do it.
All right,
the closest thing is probably I put out a podcast on my Patreon once a month where I talk about movies, books.
I almost said P Brain Nutter story time about Marjorie Taylor Greene. When we joined Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's P Brain Nutter story time, like John's peanut butter story time Patreon.
Anyway, thank you to all the gifting going on. Box gifting 1 membership, Lady AF gifting 5, Rage Rock for Now gifting 5, Raymond gifting 10 more. Damn, look at all the gifting. Well, thank you so much. In the comments, Christina Elisa Brown, who had been all about Bret in the previous comment, says John's hair looks good with the way he parted it. Thank you. This is just how it naturally parted. I didn't do anything with it, but thank you. I do appreciate that. I blow dried it and then I combed it. That's all. I didn't.
Gonna ask, like, how long do you blow dry? You like Muddy Waters.
A minute? Muddy Water.
Oh my God, Muddy Waters have the best pompadour.
Oh, okay. This is just I blow dry. There's no product in it. It's just blow dry backwards combing. No parting. In 1 week, it will be lost and I'll have terrible hair again. Don't worry. These are like oases in the desert.
I know that.
Anyway, Nightmare Dice Dragon says, is Bret more unhinged on the main show than when he is on TDR Fridays? Yes, and I'm freaking loving it. Can you play South of Midnight and TDR and catch both vibes? I don't know South of Midnight, but yes, I think he is slightly more deranged. Okay, let's see. Michael from Oklahoma in the members comments says, I find everything about MTG annoying, but I have a trivial personal beef as well. Whenever I look up what's new in the Magic the Gathering CCG and just type in the abbreviation, I have to scroll past endless videos of her stupidity before I find out anything about MTG. Yeah, that has really ruined things. I wish that like AOC was an acronym for something like about bass fishing, so conservatives would also feel the same pain when they go to search for things. Anyway, Dragon says TDR Friday on a Wednesday. I'm pumped. Thank you. Me too. And that's all the time. Okay, well, we have important news to get to. You're not going to want to miss it after this. Welcome back to what remains of the second hour of the Young Turks. Thank you everyone for being here. I do want to let you know that, of course, we will be doing our bonus episode afterward. It's going to be Bret and I, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of hijinks and nonsense. So prep yourself for that. But first, prepare for this.
What are the existential threats that humanity faces? We spent a lot of time talking about the birth rate thing. That might be the biggest single threat to the future of human civilization.
People just don't understand, like, nothing will make you happier than having kids. It will absolutely improve your happiness level to have kids.
I agree with him there. I think that having kids can make you very happy. I have loved becoming a father. I think for a lot of people, though, having the money to be able to have kids would be nice. I feel like you're missing something there, Elon Musk. But he's jumping way past the whole financing thing, and he's not happy to just have kids. He wants to have, apparently, a legion of kids. His words. A new report by the Wall Street Journal has revealed how he is basically mass DMing influencers on Twitter with offers to knock them up. And we're finding out about this thanks to Ashley St. Clair, one of the apparent mothers of one of his children. Well, at least according to a court, not according to him. Actually acknowledging the kid after all that he's done and said in regards to her would be the honorable thing to do. So clearly he's gone in the opposite direction. Anyway, she's a conservative influencer influencer, and you've probably seen that she's been feuding with Musk lately over the child that they have together. Just bear in mind, they had a court-ordered paternity test that showed he had a 99.9999% chance of being the father, or a 0.00001% chance of not. So you're telling me there's a chance. Anyway, he apparently wants to have way more kids than the 14 or so that he publicly acknowledges. He refers to them as a legion, a reference to the ancient military units that could contain thousands of soldiers and were key to extending the reach of the Roman Empire. We'd learned sometime last year that the average man thinks about Rome 5 times a day, not generally in reference to the desire to reconstitute the empire with their own sperm, but that's a Musk thing, I guess. Anyway, during St. Clair's pregnancy, he suggested to her that they bring in other women to have even more of their children faster. To quote, reach legion level before the apocalypse, we will need to use surrogates. Now, bear in mind, he has a big compound in Austin, Texas that he has some of his kids and their moms at. He wants to get all of them together where they'll definitely be comfortable. Anyway, he tried to get her there to spend time with the kid legion. I just want you to bear in mind, the other kids aren't hers. And they're not married. She's not their stepmom or anything. She's just one of the women he propositioned online. This is not as romantic as he's apparently convinced himself that it is. And so there's more. It's gonna get weirder in a lot of different ways. He has a handler, Bret, this guy who helps to contact them with the offer to impregnate them and like sets up the like financial trap that provides for the kids while also stopping them from revealing what they've been subjected to. The whole thing is weird. What do you think?
The last thing I like watching Elon on stage, the last thing I want to think about is him having sex.
I think it's exactly like The Jump, but horizontal.
Like I've seen the literal underbelly of the beast. It's horrifying.
What about the underbelly of the beast with 2 backs?
Oh, look at you. Look at your Othello reference.
Shakespeare. There you go. Did you just volunteer to have a kid with Elon Musk?
No, I volunteer as tribute.
It might take a few tries, but
like Elon, they're not there because they want to help you build a legion. They're not there because they love you. They're not there because they like you. How could they? They're there for the money.
Lebowski.
I will I don't know how. Yeah, but I hope if anyone can do it, it's science genius Elon Musk. I volunteer to have you use me as your surrogate. I don't care. I will poop your baby out for $10 million.
Bret, you are subjecting yourself potentially to the least satisfying 30 seconds and 3.5 inches of your life.
No, the problem
is for $10 million.
It will take forever because it takes him forever to say anything. That's why people think he's smart. He's like, maybe we can a little legion of birthright. I like, are declining birth rates a problem? Like maybe in a generation for Social Security, like
yeah.
But then in the following generation, no, it's not. And there's more space, and there's China seems to be doing fine with a declining birth rate. Like they were having trouble with an increasing birth rate, and they took drastic action. My buddy Thanos is for the declining birth rate. But like it's I just want to say, like when we were saying like they're weird, this is it. This is the weird thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And weird, but also like manipulative and corrupt. And we'll get to that in a sec. I also just want to point out, like he is so, like, I've been trying to convince people that he's not a genius. He's not just not a genius. He's a dum-dum. He's a legit dum-dum. Like, let's say you think declining birth rates are bad. Well, then I have to have more kids. That has no relationship with it. Like that, like a genius would know that doesn't do literally anything to solve the problem. That's 0.00001% of a societal problem. Like it's so stupid. But even worse, it was revealed in this that he pressured St. Clair to have a C-section because in his words, vaginal birth limits the size of the brain. And I know I want people to think about it for like at least 5 seconds, which is more than he thought about it. He thinks that because of like the evolutionary pressure of brain size and birth canal width or whatever, meaning long term that there might be some sort of limit on the ability of the brain to continue to evolve larger. No, he thinks the way it works is on an individual level, if you go through the vagina, your brain will be smaller for the rest of your life. It's dumber, I think, than anything I've ever seen a Louis Gohmert say, a Marjorie Greene say, and he believes it. He actually believes that. He's one of the dumbest people in the world, but also corrupt, because he apparently saw Tiffany Wong is a cryptocurrency influencer on Twitter, and he had the hots for her. So he did what you do. He DM'd her, would you like me to impregnate you? They'd never met, just DM'd it. Okay. Oh, but it's weird when I do it because I'm not a billionaire or whatever. Get off my back. Anyway, they began interacting. Okay, he'd like her posts. Okay, and during the height of her interactions with Musk, she earned apparently $21,000 in a 2-week period in November, which is crazy. Now, it would seem to be because of like added engagement because he's engaging with her. I believe, no evidence, he juiced the system to get her engagement up so that she'd be excited to be affiliated with him.
That is a weird way to refer to
that.
intercourse, is juicing the system.
Oh, anyway, so he sent her a direct message asking if she was interested in having his child. Now she apparently wasn't interested because, look at him. And she told St. Clair that she was worried about how rejecting Musk could affect her earnings on Twitter, which apparently they did, because he then chided her for not being discreet. As I said on TDR, he wants her to be discreet the way he is, DMing random women, do you want me to knock you up? That level of discretion. So he unfollowed her. And according to the Wall Street Journal, that contributed to a fall in her engagement and her earnings declined. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Or maybe in the same way that the owner of the platform can suddenly give her more money through forced engagement, he can also shadow ban her if he wants to as punishment for not subjecting herself to his disgusting advances. Now, again, I can't prove that, but I feel like he is certainly not above that. Any other thoughts?
Like, that is why most guys do what they do, is so they can get girls.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, like that's it. Like from the peacock spreading its feathers to impress a mate, so too doth the man learn guitar, and the total dork get hair implants and start a PayPal. Like that is what that is what it's all about. The social network, basically, this is their premise, is that he wanted to get girls and he didn't know how to interact with them, whether that's true or not. Like that resonates with a lot of folks. And I'm not the only one to say this. It's actually sadder than that. It's less like carnal than that. And it's more like, please, please, please look at me. Please, please, please like me. This is like the sex version. This is the relationship. This is the like, please let me touch you version of it. But like, there's a broader, more meta, like everything he does is so that people will think he's funny and like him. It's so like, it's
and he's
like,
not great at it.
Just and people, it makes people like him less. It makes fewer people like him. Now the people that like him because they want to be rich like him, not because they want to have his personality. Are you kidding me? My God. But what's funny is like this guy has a reputation, like owns companies that make rockets that land on chopsticks, and still he is hated by half the world.
Yeah.
He was like, he doesn't realize this, but that was not enough for people to kind of think, oh, he's a smart guy and he has companies and we like him. And everyone was buying his stuff. And now he's got creepy and too much.
You can't outrun who you are, your personality. And he is terrible. He bought companies with impressive people that work at it. And that's not enough. If he wanted to, even now, I think, if he wanted to commit himself over the next 10 years to being the most beloved person in the world, he has the resources to do it, but he's not gonna do it because he's stupid and he's terrible. And so he's only going to be more unpopular a year from now and 5 years from now than he is right now. And maybe, maybe in an alternate reality where He'd been born via C-section. His brain would be bigger. That's the way it works. Then he could figure it out. But unfortunately, the vagina doomed him, as it so often does. Anyway, no, he's terrible. All of this is terrible. By the way, like DMing, like I understand this is the modern world. I have no problem with DMing people, but your first message shouldn't be, you want some sperm? That's not how it's supposed to go. Like Bret, I know you've entered into relationships that began in that way. My now wife asked me to take her to The Hobbit for our first date, and she successfully, in the Ali Wong style, trapped me with that. She knew the way to get to me, and that's fine. But the first thing had nothing to do with seminal fluids, just to be clear. Anyway, okay, we have like a minute. I can read a comment or two, I think. I can talk about semen more if you want.
Oh my God, just back to my point about like how John calls me the gross one. John calls me the gross one.
Trying to make you uncomfortable. I'm punch drunk because I didn't sleep last night. I'm trying to make you uncomfortable. Anyway, a cow Ra on Twitch has been with us for 6 months and says those Game of Thrones review shows were really good. That was a lot of fun. We did a lot of shows reactions, but the Game of Thrones one was so fun. I remember when the Mountain versus the Viper, I remember sitting there the whole time just waiting for it to happen and for Cenk to freak out. Those were great moments. Anyway, we once did a live reaction to a Super Bowl. Let's bring that back. I know I don't have time to, but let's bring that back. Anyway, okay, I think that's probably good. We're good. I don't have time. We have time?
So this show, John, just so you know that your show goes to 58. This show goes to 59:45.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, let's see. There was a poll. Would you watch What the Flick with John and Bret? Hell yes was at 84%, and then 16% of you have terrible taste. So I guess we can bring that back. We're gonna have to look into that. By the way,
here's what's gonna happen: is I'm gonna say, John, do you want to do that next week? And he's gonna say, oh, my baby's got too many needs. And I'll be like, well, how old is this thing? Can it not drive yet? And he'll be like, she's 1.
She's almost 2. Yeah, no, I would love to. Like, oh God, imagine doing like live reactions like Andor or something. Oh, how cool!
I will do that.
I know.
I'm going to do that. We have nothing. We don't have any kids, so we just look at each other all day.
I don't think you look at each other that much.
We don't. We get in different rooms. But then when when it's dinner time, we're like, what are we watching? And there's only so many Gordon Ramsay shows.
That's true. Top Chef is back. Consider it. Anyway, okay. When does this hour end? Okay, we got 1 minute. I don't know how this show works. I've only been hosting it for 12 years.
I love it so much.
Anyway, okay,
I'm not
let's see.
Help anymore.
Carrie Dragon Yaya says it's not having kids, it's raising kids, which he is not doing. Yeah, it's super easy to contribute genetic material. A dum-dum can do that. Being a father, that's more complicated. But he spends as much time with his kids as he does with his corporations. It's easy to be CEO if you don't even remember which companies you're in charge of, sure. Anyway, let's see. Delivery goes.
I'm Vinny says, should I watch Andor? Yes.
Oh my God, Andor's so good.
It's the best. It's done by the Michael Clayton person.
Okay, I don't know.
It's a heist. It's always
the last third of Andor. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, okay, and go watch Wheel of Time. Get those numbers up so they'll get a few more seasons going.
It's number 5 in the US today.
Oh, interesting. Okay, we'll talk more about that. Okay, we'll see you in the bonus episode. Bye.